As a boy, I would look at all these videos and pictures and think, how cool would it be if I could be on that trip?
There's just not anything like it that I know in the world.
Excellent. I'm here with Craig at Ayada. He's the director of rooms, and now, because of the whole situation, also the COVID safety officer.
That's right.
What does a COVID safety officer do at the resort?
Sure. So my job as COVID safety officer is to make sure that the resort follows all of the legal protocols and guidelines for us to be able to remain open as a resort during these times, and to make sure that all of the team, all of the managers are following the protocols to make it safe for the guests and also for the staff.
Right. Okay. What is what are some of the safety protocols here at Ayada?
Sure. So before we opened, we have to meet the guidelines in the Maldives of the Health Protection Agency, which is HPA. So they've given us a list of things that we have to cover or to make sure that we follow to remain open. But some of the examples are, for example, enhanced cleaning of the villas, for example, which I think everyone's more aware of now in these COVID times. So, for example, at Ayada, we actually do URV treatments of all the rooms immediately after the guests check out and prior to housekeeping actually going in and cleaning the villas.
Yep.
So that means it gives a guest a guarantee that the room's been disinfected and sanitised even before housekeeping have gone and actually cleaned, to make sure that they're safe when they arrive,
Yep.
for example.
Yeah.
Other things include we do daily temperature checks, which is a legal requirement. So not only do all of the guests, all of the staff have to have a temperature check and a wellness check to make sure that they're actually that they're feeling fine and they've not got any COVID symptoms as well. So there's lots of things that we've sort of looked at to try and ensure that the guest the process is seamless, and to make the guests reassured that we've got their safety in mind.
I guess for the last almost 2.5 weeks, we've been cruising up and down the Maldives, and we stayed at some different resorts as well. And the protocols are different, right? From resort to resort. How does that work? Do you guys have guidelines from the government and then you implement your own, or what's the process there?
So, for example, I think there's the base guidelines that are issued out in terms of the temperature checks, for example. And then each resort or each hotel looks at how we can do it better or implements their own standards. So, for example, at Ayada, we've actually taken the opportunity to remove all of the paper from the villas, which wasn't a set standard. But to provide that reassurance, we've actually got an Ayada app now. So we've actually got an application that's got everything that used to be in the traditional companion that's now available digitally, and it's more seamless for the guest. And so we've obviously done something and enhanced it, the procedure, which whilst others may have just left the same sort of thing.
That's very cool. That's awesome. I guess I don't know how many staff members you have right now on the island.
So we've got around 250 staff at the moment.
And they all get tested regularly, or
for PCR test or for temperature?
For both.
Both?
Really?
So for Ayada, it's compulsory to have your temperature check every day.
Yep.
In terms of PCR tests, we actually do symptomatic testing.
Yep.
So if anyone's not feeling very well, then we automatically follow a procedure in terms of placing them into quarantine, doing a PCR test to check to see whether to also protect the rest of the staff and the guests. But we're looking to make sure that they're protected before it spreads as such.
And you do daily temperature tests for staff only, or guests as well?
Guests as well.
Guests as well, every day.
That's right. So we've got a resort doctor and a resort nurse. Part of their duties, as well as our lifestyle butlers, is to take the temperature checks of the guests to make sure. And also, it's not just the temperature check; it's actually just checking that they've got any symptoms. Because it's not just the fever. It could be a headache. It could be runny nose. It could be just aches and pains and that sort of thing as well.
And I think a very cool thing you guys have here is you do your tests on the island, right? You don't have to go anywhere. You get tested right here on the island.
Yeah.
What's the process there? You get tested on the island by the resort nurse and doctor, and then where does the test go? Where's the lab, and how does that work?
So we do not have a PCR test kit, or machine I should say, on the island, which the majority of the resorts don't have in the Maldives. but we've streamlined the process. So normally we liaise with the guests in terms of when they need to have a PCR test.
Yep.
The majority of the time it's down to their departure, so they need it for their destination country or for the airline. And so the doctor or the nurse would carry out the PCR test the day before. We send them via our transfer boat and transfer plane up to Mali, and then we have worked with one of the hospitals there to get the tests done. It's all very speedy. We normally get the results back within 12 hours from the point of the samples going into the hospital.
Yep.
And obviously if someone was symptomatic in terms of a fever or something along those lines, then we would carry out the sample there and then as well.
Great. And I guess like with vaccination and vaccines, it's the same, right? Like most of the staff is vaccinated already, right?
So the Maldives have done a really good job in terms of vaccinating both the locals in terms of on their islands, and also made sure that because tourism is such a big part of the Maldives life, that the team members on the resorts have had the opportunity to be vaccinated as well. So majority of our staff now have had the second vaccine, and so now we're able to provide the added protection to the staff and as well as the guests, that the staff have been vaccinated accordingly.
And what happens if, let's say, a guest or even a staff member tests positive on the island?
Sure. So if a guest or a staff member tests positive, the first thing is we have to place them into isolation. So as per the HPA guidelines, they have to be isolated for 14 days. And what happens is it depends on the severity of the symptoms. Normally if someone has a pre-existing health condition, or if they're an elder person, then they have to, they would most likely be taken to a Maldivian government hospital or quarantine facility, because they have more adequate health equipment to look after them. But the majority of the time, as a resort, we can actually have positive cases on the island. All of the resorts have spent money on terms of medical equipment to handle the basic cases.
Yep.
And the majority of the people that have COVID don't have very severe symptoms. They're able to stay in the resort. But we place them in isolation and for 14 days, and effectively we have isolation rooms, and then they get treated separately, clearly, and so for example we would serve them IBD or a room service to the villa, for example, so they would be fed, and the team have to follow certain guidelines in terms of appropriate PPE.
Yep.
To make sure that the team members are safe and the guests as well.
I guess like for us, or at least for sales, right, one of the most common concerns they hear or people talk about is like, what happens if I get COVID like 2 days before my trip ends, before I'm supposed to fly out? Like, can you explain a little bit more, like what happens if somebody needs to extend their trip because of COVID?
Sure. So I think the majority of the airlines are actually, in terms of departing, for example, obviously lots of people have tested positive, been in the same situation. So the airlines are used to guests actually saying, look, I've tested positive, and they're quite flexible in terms of changing their departure dates. So the flights are quite an easy thing. I think it's just and I'm conscious of very much the emotional impact it is to the guests, because clearly, as you said, they might be leaving in 2 days' time. They're stuck.
Right.
For another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's the family situation, it's their jobs, and it's the things. So they go through for 24 hours or so, sort of like the reorganising of their lives. But I think the majority of the guests actually understand the importance of the fact that they can't travel. The Maldivian government wouldn't let them leave the country if they tested positive. They have to have a document to say that they've completed their isolation or their quarantine.
Yeah.
So I think it's reassuring the guests, and the guests, as I said, with regards to the airlines, most people are able to rearrange their lives accordingly to be able to leave. I think there's always the question mark in terms of who pays and that sort of thing. Right. Some resorts, it varies per resort. Some resorts actually provide it for a complimentary basis in terms of the food and the accommodation. Others have COVID insurance that the guests pay to buy into, which will cover the costs.
Yep.
And other resorts actually just pass the direct costs on to the guests as well. So it varies in terms of the Maldives, which resort does what effectively.
Can you disclose what Ayada does, or?
Sure. At the moment, because we are a 5-star resort, we're one of in the top 10 in TripAdvisor. So for us, it's very much continuing the guest experience.
Yeah.
So the base of it in terms of accommodation is covered. In terms of we would cover the cost for on behalf of the guest.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's something. Obviously, guests when they or our clients when they book a trip, that's one of the questions they want to know. They want to know who pays when things go sour, and I think that's nice that you guys take care of it and give the guests, I guess,
Sure.
a little bit more security when things go wrong. And of course, like we all have to wear masks. We get shuffled off the plane one by one. There's all these protocols in place. Do you think some of the protocols will stay past COVID times?
Sure. I think in terms of the guest expectation, in terms of the sanitization or the disinfection of the villa, I think will continue. I think cleanliness is very important, let alone the villa or public areas as well. I think in terms of for us, it's concentrated on the digital side. So I think the idea of sitting down at a table with the paper menu is going to go out the door now, because it's not something that we're looking at the process, and actually we don't need the menus. A QR code or the app works well.
Everybody has a phone, right?
Exactly. So I think that sort of thing makes and by removing that, it actually creates. For us, what we've found is that there's a better connection with the guests, because you have to talk to the guests more and interact with them, rather than just giving them a piece of paper or a little book for them to read. Now there's more interaction from the guests, which we're getting positive feedback from.
Yeah, it's very insightful information, and I think our guests and clients really appreciate this. So thank you very much.
It's okay, thank you.
And if there's anything else you want to share, otherwise we're done.
Come to Ayada Maldives.
Perfect.
We at LUEX are all about finding the best trips for you, for your requirements, your ability level, your taste and preferred style. Just the best options in the world.
LUEX offers you the world's largest selection of travel packages. We can offer you hundreds of unique and absolutely amazing travel experiences. No matter how special your requirements are, we will have the right option for you, guaranteed. The choice is only one side of the coin. The other one is the LUEX Objective Expert Advice to help you select the best option available. We have visited all destinations ourselves and know exactly what package will suit you and what won't. We also guarantee you the best available prices. In the unlikely case that anybody offers you the same package at a lower rate, just let us know and we will beat that price for you. We will be there for you 24/7, and we will spend as much time with you as it takes to find the best travel package possible and to assist you before, during and after your trip. Last but not least, you will enjoy the highest customer protection possible. Check out our website for details. We are living on repeat business and will make sure you get what you deserve.
Seen enough? Well, then give us a call if you want to ride the most amazing waves or some of the world's finest powder. Just check out LUEX.com.